Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are, whenever you are, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of The Devil and the Deep Blue Me, and I am your host, Rich Bruck. If you've listened to Season 1, then you know that this is where I talk about whatever's bouncing around in my head. And if you're new here, well, that's basically what this is. I make music, I teach music lessons, and apparently I have opinions about things. So I've been thinking about doing this second season for a while now, and I kept getting stuck on what it should be about. I didn't know if I should do guitar tutorials or if I should talk about recording techniques. And honestly, none of that really excited me all that much. But what does excite me is just talking about life stuff, about the weird things that I've learned along the way. I'm well over 40 now. I'm a Gen X baby, and I keep having these moments where I'm talking to some of my younger music students that I'm a little closer with, and they'll tell me about some drama that they're having or some decision that they're wrestling with, and I usually find myself thinking, wow, I remember feeling just like that. But, I also have this perspective now that I didn't have then. And not because I'm smarter. No, definitely not because I'm smarter, but just simply because I've been through more stuff. And I thought, well, maybe that's what this season should be all about. Not trying to give advice, because God knows we have enough people doing that, but just me sharing what I wish someone had told me when I was figuring things out. Even though, more likely than not, I probably wouldn't have listened to them in the first place. Actually, you know what? That's probably episode material right there. Why we don't listen to advice, even when it's good. But whatever, I'm getting ahead of myself. Today, though, I want to talk about starting over. Because here's the thing nobody ever tells you when you're in your 20s. You're going to do it a lot, starting over. I mean, I used to think that starting over meant that you had failed at something. Like successful people, they pick a path and they stick with it. They become a lawyer and they stay a lawyer, or they start a band and they become famous, or whatever it is. But starting over to me was just something you did when you screwed up. But having started over, 3, 4, 5 times in my adult life, depending on how you count it, I realized that that's not the case. The first time I started over was when I realized the whole make it in the music thing wasn't really happening the way that I thought it would. I was around 22, 23, and life and reality stepped in very unexpectedly. And I had to accept that I wasn't going to be the next whoever I thought I was going to be. I'd been recording and writing and doing all of that thing, really focusing on music since I was 13, 14. So I had spent a lot of years doing it, and then I had to make a change. I had to start over, take a different approach to music altogether. I moved to a different city, and I started teaching more, and I did more cover band gigs, and I even dabbled in the jingle business briefly. I had to. There was no room for fantasies and dreams anymore, let alone trying to make it big while the hydro was getting cut off or the fridge was empty. And I'm chuckling, but it was devastating. Actually, it really messed with my brain and my spirit, my very definition of who I thought I was up until that point. And then, of course, there was the relationship thing, and I won't get into any gory details, but let's just say I had to rebuild my entire life from scratch. A new apartment, new routines, a new sense of who I was when I was no longer part of a couple, when I was just alone, just me, and that's a completely different thing. And for someone in their 20s and 30s who really didn't even know who I was by myself, really, especially after moving, right out of my parents' place directly to them, it was relatively devastating and on a few different levels. And then the career pivot in my 40s, when I realized teaching was more than I thought it would ever be in my life, and realizing it had been what was paying my bills and things for so long. And at the time, actually, not to mention any choice that I had, but that's when I dove full force and opened my own music store. My plan B, as I saw it, was now my plan A. And I guess that wasn't really starting over, but it was more like a huge evolution. But it felt like starting over at the time. It was a huge life change, way more responsibility, way more expenses that actually required success to some degree in order to even stay afloat, and way more hours and way more stress. But it was my new baby, and I was determined to give it my all, regardless of the consequence. But then, after building it to the point where I needed it to be, to not have to put in so many hours and to not have to worry quite so much about money, and to finally be able to, feel like a successful business owner, bang, life changed again, and the pandemic hit, and it forced me to close down. Forced me for months and months to watch everything else open up after that, while governments teetered back and forth on the decision as to whether or not to let something like my business stay open, where I was, small spaces with kids and whatnot. And then to watch people now getting very used to shopping online, and to watch students move on or move away, or even find new ways to learn, or even new hobbies to take them away from music altogether. I was now officially out of business. Well, I guess not really out of business, but everything I had was gone. I could no longer afford staff. I didn't have the clientele. I didn't have the customers. And actually, on top of that, I ended up getting really sick and winded up in the hospital. And I will tell you that there's nothing quite like facing death. And I'm not even joking, but facing death right in the eye to reevaluate yourself, your life, to make you wonder if you're on the right path, to make you wonder if you would have any regrets or things that you'd wish you had have done differently in your life. And that's when I decided to make another life change, and that's the current one I'm living. I know I certainly could have rebuilt everything, and I know I could have started over again and done lots of advertising, and once again gone full force into rebuilding the store. And granted, it would have been much different, but you know what I mean. I could have done it all over again and built it up just like I did the first time, but I just didn't want to. I wasn't happy. I mean, not completely happy. I was finally getting content at best, but I felt like I had abandoned that child in me, the one that did have dreams and aspirations to be something more than just, a music store owner. The one that loved music so much he was willing to dedicate his life to it. So it was actually in the hospital, or very shortly after returning home, that I decided I'm not going to rebuild the store. I'm going to finally focus on me and what I want. I mean, what I really want. And that was to become a full-time musician again, to go back to writing and recording, which had felt like I hadn't done in forever, and to finally pursue my own music, my own way again. And to finally chase the dream that, I had, basically abandoned a very long time ago. So I wrote and recorded my first song. And actually, I got a gig working with a company called Songfinch, where I was forced to write songs in a damn hurry for customers. And that certainly upped my writing chops and my recording skills very quickly. And then I started a YouTube channel that does background music and guided meditations, and more so because I wanted to see how that all worked and to see if I could actually make money on it. And, you know what I did? I finally am. And now here I am doing this podcast thing, putting myself out there in a completely different way than I ever have before. And at my age, basically starting all over again. And it's pretty scary. But here's what I wish I'd known. Starting over isn't failure. It's just life. It's what happens when you actually pay attention to who you're becoming instead of trying to force yourself to stay who you thought you were supposed to be, if that makes any sense. I remember being so afraid of change when I was younger. Like, what if I make the wrong choice? Or what if I waste the time that I've already invested? What if people think I don't know what I'm doing? Well, spoiler alert, people are going to think you don't know what you're doing no matter what you do. Because here's the little secret of life. Most of us don't know what we're doing most of the time. We're all just making educated guesses and hoping for the best. But the thing about starting over is that you get to take everything you've learned with you. And it's not like you're actually starting from zero. You're starting from zero, but with all of your accumulated experience and all your skills and all your perspective. And that's actually a very powerful place to be starting from. I teach this one student. She's 24, and she's been agonizing about whether to quit her job and go back to school. And she keeps saying, but I'll be 26 when I graduate, and I'll be so behind everyone else. And I'm like, you're going to be 26 anyway. And you can be 26 with a degree in something that you actually want to do, or you can be 26 still stuck in a job that makes you miserable. It's your choice, but you got to remember, it's always a choice. Time is going to pass regardless. The question is what you want to be doing with that time. I think the fear of starting over comes from this idea that there's, some perfect path, some right way to do life. And if you deviate from it, well, you are screwing up. But life isn't a straight line. It's more like jazz. You got a basic structure and you're improvising most of what goes around that. And sometimes the best parts happen when you completely go off script. The other thing about starting over is that it gets easier each time. Not because the process gets any easier, but because you start to trust yourself more. You realize you've survived big changes before, and you can certainly survive them again. And you realize that most of the catastrophic outcomes that you desperately worried about didn't actually happen. And honestly, sometimes starting over is the best thing that's ever happened to you. Sometimes it's the only way to figure out who you actually are underneath all the expectations and assumptions and habits that you've accumulated or even had put onto you. So don't ever be scared to live, to truly live, to live your life the way you want it to be. I think you'll find out that living that way is actually the happier, more successful path in life. And you know what? If it isn't, well, then you can always change it up again and go the whole 9 yards in a completely different direction yet again. And on that note, I will be returning to the famous and ever so enticing enrichment segment, just as I did in season 1, because you know what? People seem to love it. I know I certainly did. So now it is time for some random trivia that has absolutely nothing to do with anything that I've been talking about thus far, but that I still found very interesting. And, actually, with the exception of this first one. Did you know that the reason we say the whole 9 yards, even though it has a disputed origin, the most credible theory is that it comes from World War II fighter pilots? Apparently, the ammunition belts for their machine guns were exactly 9 yards long. So when they used up all their ammo in a fight, they'd given it the whole 9 yards. I love that, There's something satisfying about discovering the literal origin of phrases that we use metaphorically all the time. So here's another one. You know how we say someone spilled the beans when they reveal a secret? Well, apparently that comes from ancient Greece, They used to vote by dropping black or white beans into jars. And if someone accidentally knocked over the jar and spilled the beans, they would reveal how everyone voted before the official count. I don't know why I find this stuff so fascinating. Maybe it's because I like little pieces of history that got embedded into our language, and most of us use them without even thinking about where they came from. Which brings me to the final one, break a leg. In theater, supposedly, it comes from the fact that curtain ropes used to be called legs. And if you broke a leg, it meant you performed so well that you broke the curtain rope from all the curtain calls that you had done. Now, I will say honestly that might be one of those explanations that sounds good but isn't actually true. But that's what I read. So that's it. This week's segment of enrichment. And as I was speaking of starting over, I am working on a new song that's kind of about that. It's still pretty rough, and it's in that stage where, I got chord progressions and I know how it's going to go and that sort of thing. But the lyrics are kind of fighting with me. But currently it's called Ghost of Plans. And even though that might change, it's all about the different versions of yourself that you thought you were going to become and how they kind of haunt you sometimes. Not, in a bad way necessarily, but like they're still there, and all these alternative timelines that you might have gone down had you chosen different paths in lives. I'll probably have more to share about that in a few episodes, but as I say, right now it's still in that fragile stage where talking about it too much just might jinx it, so I'm going to shut up about it right now. But if you do want to hear what I'm currently listening to while I work on my stuff, I've been obsessing over this old Lucero album. There's something about Jason Isbell's songwriting that just gets to me. The way he can pack so much life experience into, 3.5 minutes. So anyway, that's what I'm aiming for on this new one, and I've been listening to that. Anyway, that's what I've been thinking about this week. Starting over, and how it's not the end of the world, it's just Tuesday, or whatever day you decide you're done with the way things have been. If you've listened to season 1, thank you very much for coming back. And if you're new, well, welcome to whatever this is. I'm not entirely sure where we're going with this just yet, but that seems very appropriate given today's topic anyway. Next episode, I think I want to talk about the myth of having it all figured out. And here is another little spoiler alert. I definitely don't, and I'm starting to think no one really does, and that is completely okay. Until then, keep doing whatever you're doing, or you know what? Don't. Start over if you want to. The choice is always yours, but until the next time, have yourself a safe and happy week.